It was an ordinary morning as passengers steadily made their way into the airplane for what seemed like a routine flight. Among the crowd was a man in his early 40s, dressed casually yet neatly. He carried himself with a composed demeanor, serious but unassuming. Blending seamlessly with the bustling passengers, he moved with the calm of someone accustomed to such journeys. As the passengers settled in, the usual hum of pre-flight activity filled the cabin. People shuffled into their seats, buckling up and arranging their belongings. Some were immersed in quiet conversation, while others scrolled through their phones or leafed through magazines. The flight attendants moved through the narrow aisle with precision, their practiced smiles and warm greetings setting the tone for a smooth journey. Rachel, a seasoned flight attendant in her early 30s, was among them. With nearly a decade of experience under her belt, she exuded an air of professionalism and poise. Her polished demeanor and knack for making passengers feel at ease had earned her a reputation among colleagues as one of the best in the business. Today, she approached her tasks with the same grace and efficiency as always, unaware that her assumptions about this seemingly uneventful flight were about to be challenged. As Rachel pushed the beverage cart down the aisle, her eyes scanned the rows of passengers. Reaching seat 14C, she paused and addressed the man sitting there with her usual polite smile. "Would you like something to drink, sir?" she asked, her voice smooth and welcoming. The man looked up briefly, his calm, unreadable face giving little away. "Water, please," he replied in a voice that was quiet yet carried an air of authority. Rachel handed him the bottle with a nod and continued down the aisle. To her, he seemed like any other business traveler, reserved, straightforward, and focused. There was nothing about him that stood out, and yet, something about his presence lingered in her mind. As the flight progressed, Rachel found herself glancing back at seat 14C. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was a subtle sense of intrigue that the man seemed to carry. His quiet confidence and composed demeanor felt unusual, almost out of place among the usual energy of the passengers. In the galley, Rachel overheard a hushed conversation between her colleague James and another crew member. "That guy in 14C, doesn't he look familiar?" James whispered, his voice tinged with curiosity. Rachel dismissed the comment, chalking it up to the usual passenger speculation. It wasn't uncommon for people to imagine they recognized someone famous or important on a flight, especially in first class. Still, as she walked past the man's seat again, she couldn't entirely shake the faint ripple of recognition forming in her mind. Midway through the flight, Rachel was called to the cockpit by the captain. His tone, calm but measured, hinted at something unusual. "We've had a request from a passenger to speak directly with you," he said, handing her a note. Rachel frowned, her mind racing through the possibilities. "Who is it?" she asked, glancing at the captain with a mix of curiosity and concern. The captain consulted his notes. "Mr. Logan Kent," he replied. The name rang a faint bell in Rachel's mind, but she couldn't immediately place it. Her professional instincts kicked in, and she nodded. "I'll handle it," she said, straightening her posture before heading back to the cabin. Approaching seat 14C, Rachel found the man watching her calmly, his gaze steady but unreadable. "Mr. Kent, I understand you'd like to speak with me?" she began, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her thoughts. Logan Kent gave a brief nod and gestured to the seat across from him. "Yes, thank you for coming over. I wanted to bring something to your attention," he said, his tone polite but firm. Rachel sat down, her professionalism intact even as her curiosity reached its peak. She couldn't help but wonder what this seemingly ordinary man could possibly want to discuss. As she waited for him to speak, the first hint of an extraordinary lesson began to unfold. Rachel's curiosity simmered beneath her professional demeanor as Logan Kent reached into his jacket pocket and slid a sleek, black business card across the small table between them. The card, embossed with gold lettering, gleamed under the cabin lights. Picking it up, Rachel scanned the text, her eyes widening as she read the name and title. Logan Kent, CEO, Skyline Airways. Her heart skipped a beat. The weight of the realization settled in her chest like a lead balloon. This wasn't just another passenger. The man in 14C was the CEO of the airline she worked for. the very organization that had shaped her career and supported her professional growth. Rachel's mind raced as memories of her earlier indifference flashed before her eyes. She had made quick, unconscious judgments about him based on his simple attire and reserved demeanor, never imagining he might hold such significance. Embarrassment and regret crept up her spine as she struggled to maintain her composure. "Mr. Kent, I didn't realize," Rachel stammered, her cheeks flushing with heat as she clutched the card tightly. Logan held up a hand, his expression calm but serious. "It's fine," he said in an even tone. "I'm not here to reprimand you. I simply wanted to share some feedback." Rachel nodded quickly, her posture straightening as she mentally prepared herself. "Of course, sir. I'm listening," she replied, her voice steady despite the unease bubbling within her. Logan's words were measured, deliberate, and carried the weight of his authority. "Your service has been professional," he began, "but I sensed hesitation earlier. It made me reflect on the subtle ways assumptions can shape interactions, even in the smallest moments." Rachel's heart pounded as she absorbed his words. It wasn't a direct criticism, but the message was clear. She had allowed her unconscious biases to influence her demeanor, and Logan had noticed. "You're absolutely right," she said quietly, her voice tinged with genuine regret. "And I want to sincerely apologize for any moment where I failed to treat you with the respect you deserve." Logan's expression softened slightly, though the gravity of his words remained. "I appreciate that, Rachel. We all carry biases, whether we're aware of them or not. Recognizing them is the first step toward change." His tone was firm yet compassionate, and Rachel could feel the sincerity behind his message. It wasn't just about her actions. It was a reminder of the broader responsibility she carried as a flight attendant. As Logan leaned back slightly in his seat, Rachel found herself reflecting deeply. How many times had she unconsciously categorized passengers based on their appearances or behaviors? How often had she overlooked someone's worth because of fleeting assumptions? The conversation stayed with Rachel as she returned to her duties. She moved through the cabin with her usual precision, yet her thoughts remained on Logan's words. Each interaction with a passenger now carried a new weight, a subtle but powerful shift in her perspective. She began to notice things she hadn't before. The nervous energy of a first-time flyer, the quiet determination of a business traveler preparing for a meeting, the warmth of a family sharing whispered conversations. Each passenger had a story, a complexity that deserved to be seen and respected. By the time the flight began its descent, Rachel felt as though she had been on a journey of her own. Logan Kent's quiet yet profound feedback had sparked a transformation within her, one that she knew would extend far beyond this single flight. As the plane touched down and the passengers began gathering their belongings, Rachel knew she needed to speak to Logan one more time before he left. She owed him more than just an apology. She owed him her gratitude. As the flight descended and passengers began to disembark, Rachel knew she couldn't let Logan Kent leave without speaking to him one last time. She scanned the cabin, her sharp eyes locking onto him as he prepared to exit. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with sincerity. "Mr. Kent," she called softly, catching his attention just before he stepped into the jetway. He turned to face her, his calm demeanor unchanged. "Yes, Rachel?" he asked, his tone polite yet direct. She hesitated for only a moment before continuing, her words carefully chosen. "I wanted to thank you for today. Your feedback has left a profound impact on me, and I've realized how important it is to reflect on my own actions and assumptions. I've learned something truly valuable, and I'll carry it with me moving forward." Logan studied her for a moment, his expression softening into a faint but encouraging smile. "That's all I can hope for," he replied. "Have a good day, Rachel." With those parting words, Logan disappeared down the jetway, leaving Rachel standing there amidst the hum of the emptying cabin. The air seemed heavier somehow, as if carrying the weight of the day's lesson. She took a deep breath, her mind replaying the events of the flight. Rachel knew that her role as a flight attendant wasn't just about providing service. It was about seeing people, truly seeing them, beyond their outward appearances or behavior. Logan's words had peeled back a layer of her professional routine, revealing an opportunity to grow not only as a flight attendant, but also as a person. As she walked back into the now empty cabin, Rachel began tidying up with a renewed sense of purpose. Each seat she passed seemed to tell a story. The businessman with the laptop in 3A, the young couple in 12B and 12C whispering excitedly about their honeymoon, the nervous first-time flyer who had clung to the armrest during takeoff. Each passenger carried their own complexities, their own worth, and it was her job to acknowledge that. Over the following weeks, Rachel carried the lesson from that flight into every interaction she had. She paid closer attention to the small details, a fleeting smile, a nervous glance, a casual comment. Her approach shifted from simply ensuring comfort to actively engaging with people as individuals. She began to notice the change not only in herself, but also in how passengers responded to her. A woman in her 60s traveling alone thanked her for taking the time to chat during a delay. A teenage boy nervously boarding his first flight lit up when she reassured him about turbulence. The quiet businessman who rarely spoke offered her a genuine thank you as he left the plane, a gesture that now carried more meaning than she could have imagined. Months later, Rachel was recognized by her airline for her exceptional service and dedication. In her acceptance speech, she shared the story of the day Logan Kent had unknowingly changed her perspective. That flight taught me that our job isn't just about getting passengers from one place to another, she said. It's about seeing people for who they are, without assumptions, without judgment, and treating them with the respect they deserve. The applause that followed was heartfelt, but for Rachel, the true reward was in knowing that she had grown as a person. Logan Kent's quiet feedback had set her on a path of introspection and transformation, and she vowed never to lose sight of the lesson he had taught her. From that day forward, Rachel's work took on a deeper meaning. Every interaction became an opportunity to honor the unique humanity of the people she served. And with each flight, she carried Logan's words in her heart, a constant reminder to look beyond the surface and truly see the world around her.